Hello, I'm Jennifer Keller, the Programming Coordinator at the Westport Library, today with Roya Marsh, author of the new poetry collection called Daylight. In honor of National Poetry Month and the hashtag Shelter in Poetry campaign, the library is celebrating the art of the poem, and I'm especially excited to share this collection with you. Thank you for joining me, Roya.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Roya Marsh is a nationally recognized poet, performer, educator, and activist. She is currently the poet in residence at Urban World, New York City, and her work has been featured on, sit still because this is a long list, NBC, BET, Button Poetry, Right About Now Poetry, Def Jam's All Deaf Digital, and in Poetry Magazine, Flypaper Magazine, The Village Voice, HuffPost, and The Brave Poets Volume 2, Black Girl Magic. And that's just to name a few. So thank you for spending some time with us, Roya.
Thank you.
Great. Would you share a little bit of inspiration behind Daylight?
Absolutely. So Daylight was actually born of a thesis project that I was working on while I was in a graduate program. And I sort of looked at the work that I had been creating over time, as well as the work that I had created in like 365 days. And I was like, oh, wow. All right. So my thesis specifically was based on Black butch visibility, right? And just the ways in which masculine presenting queer women have been represented in film over time from way back, like the 1900s until present day. And I was writing into certain narratives for some of my pieces. And then I was like, well, wait, what about my own life? So those were things that I was actually investigating simultaneously as working on my own thesis project. And I sort of sat back and looked at the list of poems, titles, and themes that I had. And I was like, this sort of sits well, you know, as a manuscript. And it gave me space to explore the Black women that raised me, which none of which identify as queer, but taught me how to be a woman, a Black woman in America specifically. And I was able to dedicate that project to them, right? And at the same time, be able to stand in front of people loud and proud, right? And demand visibility and demand so much more than tolerance, you know?
Wow. So would you share one or two poems from your collection then, so we get an idea of this?
Absolutely. In broad daylight, Black dykes look grilled. My feminism is visible, big-breasted, smart-mouthed, often discounted and ignored, always wearing shades or thrown it. It's got bottom grills and 3 master's degrees. Is Tiana Taylor in that Kanye video. Dressed like Queen Latifah and set it off. Ain't woman enough for the straight ones. Ain't man enough for the gay ones. It sags sometimes if I don't wear a belt. Shops in men's departments. Hard, but ain't bulletproof. Is proof of the bullet. My feminism is Jesus. The real one. The Black one. On the cross. No, the Ankh. Crucified, yet broken free, cupping the world on its bare shoulders, can carry a baby, but ain't too sure about pushing it out. My feminism is a mother effer. Wishes a mother effer would, might smile at you, but not for you. Will grab Trump by his pussy, even though he's all asshole. Gets catcalled and called dog by women and men who hate how masculine my feminism is. And it don't make women loyal. It doesn't make them stable or stay. It gets cheated on and called too feminine for having feelings about it. My feminism is exhausted of your expectations, of being judged and being denied and explaining its own femininity.
Whoa, that was gorgeous.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I had the honor and the pleasure, as I was saying earlier, of dedicating the book to the women who raised me. So in the front of the book, the first picture is my grandmother, and there's my mother, and then there's myself and my aunts. And so the next poem that I'll read is going to be dedicated to my grandmother, who went through every stage of Alzheimer's and passed away just shy of her 95th birthday. In broad daylight, Black saviors look grandma. Or, I think I built that wall myself. Or, my grandmother would never play craps. I ain't never liked gambling. My grandmother's last hurrah was at a casino in Atlantic City. She could talk then. I remember, because she called home in a panicked haze when the jackpot lights were all too much and she forgot the bus that took her there was the same bus that would take her back. My family took a gamble when putting her in a nursing home. She could talk then. I remember, because she hated that place and was, of course, fed up with the incompetence of those in power. She saw the country take a gamble on its first Black president, the best 8 years of my life. The last 8 years of hers, she was mute for years before the end. I remember, because she never wished me a happy 21st. Or maybe she did, but I wasn't close enough to hear it. I guess I forgot how to listen. I forgot how to talk to someone who could not talk back. Months before she died, this country took a gamble on Red. She couldn't talk no more, but I hadn't been listening anyway. I bet she'd had a few choice words for what'd make this country great for the first time. By now, he'd been ruling this country for 457 days, and she'd been gone for 251. And I've been going double or nothing with my sanity at stake, like going broke, gonna fix anything. And I was gonna write this to her, but I keep telling myself she'll never hear it. And I think I built that wall myself.
Ooh, I'm feeling it right here.
Yeah, this is one of the very few times that I've actually been able to recite that particular poem without crying.
I did it for you.
I appreciate it, the resonance. I really do.
So we've all been through tough times before this quarantine. Is there a poet or a poem that you've turned to during these times, or someone that's inspired you to get through these moments?
Yeah, honestly, like, it's great, I think, the way that I entered into um, the scene and like publicly calling myself a poet through competition in the poetry slam. But even with my affiliations with Urban Word NYC, I've met some of the most phenomenal writers, and I get to call them my friends. And so many names come to mind when you ask that question. But John Sands is a writer. He's from Ohio. He currently resides in Brooklyn with his wife and baby. And I mean, he is such a brilliant person, but also so warm. And he has this event or showcase that he does on Instagram Live 3 days a week. I've been on there twice so far, and it's just so beautiful. It's got a name now. It's called P's and Q's, but it's like really just this conversation that he is having with these artists in their homes about their work. So they read a poem from another poet, and then they read a poem of their own. And I mean, it's just so beautiful. And it's so like loving and warm for him to be in a position to like give his own time in order to brighten other folks' days and bring the news in and give people an event to come to at a time like this when everyone's just home, you know?
Oh, well, I'm glad that you mentioned John Sands, because I'll be speaking with him later. So he'll be online too with us.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that.
Yeah, really excited.
Yeah, he's like, there aren't words.
So that's definitely something that we could all be logging into and watching during this quarantine. But if somebody decided that to take your poetry as an inspiration, what advice would you give about writing poetry?
I think what reigns true to me mostly is actually jotting down the facts, right? And then attacking those facts based on your desires. My desire is to initially, tell whatever my truth is, and then next, or even like at the same time, be able to free someone else or allow someone else the space to tell their truth, even if our truths aren't identical or remotely similar, right? But seeing one person be candid and be honest, right? Encouraging someone else to do that thing. And I mean, right, it's literally a gift and a talent that many people fear that they don't have without even attempting to do it. And then the first steps are sharing it. I spent my adolescence literally throwing my notebook under a mattress because I was so ashamed. When like hip hop and R&B was so popular, I was ashamed that I was also writing because I didn't see them as writers. I saw them as legends, as performers, right? And so like now I'm just in this space where I'm encouraging everyone, especially while you're home, you could write into your own narrative. You could create your own world. You could write us out of this pandemic. There are so many different ways in which writing could actually soothe and aid all communities at large. So please, please get into it and read.
Mm.
Reading is really at the top. It's at the top of the list. And the more you read, the broader your lexicon becomes. I mean, and you learn new and vast ways in which to just bend language, right? And manipulate it in a way that you could just change everything that even you thought you knew about what poetry is or what writing is.
Absolutely. So, would you share a poem that you've written while staying at home these past few weeks?
Yes, absolutely. I think the joy of this is having it actually be National Poet and Writers Month, because following this 30 for 30 challenge, as well as like being able to free my mind of the things that are going on and not have those thoughts affect my personal writing. Remember that time the check was late and rent was due, and traction alopecia was snatching whatever edges the IRS left, and you, arguing with love about brownies and Ziplocs and kissing so much that kissing seems like work, and we ain't supposed to be working, we're supposed to have distance, while dying to be social with anyone except each other. I find myself missing the train I'm too anxious to take just to avoid that feeling of the walls milking the doubt out of me. And my book dropped, but no one picked it up because they were all home, too worried or sick or jobless or preoccupied with being unoccupied to read my book about me and my view on the world that no one can even get to. And I thought I knew all I needed to know when the days blended together and the sun never seemed to rise, and the crisp of night is all you had to remind yourself of morning, and that like you, it even existed, sometimes needing a reminder, minor and clumsy like condensation on a backseat window you never meant to breathe on, as foolish as your own reflection scribbled by a fingertip where there is always a smile. Even if you can't, you paint one on when your will to live is suspended in air and only gathers to cackle you stupid for trying, asking how you are still here, preying upon your own actuality. You trick yourself into living daily, constantly keeping your insides inside is an inside job. You ask yourself these questions. What kind of ancestor will you be? What will come of what you leave behind? Do you remember that time you survived?
Thank you so much for sharing that with us and the Westport Library community as a whole. Ooh, that's a lot to think about, Roya.
Thank you.
So, for those of you at home, be sure to read more of Roya Marsh's Daylight. either by buying it through your favorite book retailer that you can order through, or check it out through the library's catalog. And for more author videos and information about the Westport Library, we are at westportlibrary.org. Thank you so much for your time, Roya.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be here and to speak with you. These were super great questions.